I went to my ex-husband's family dinner. His new wife stared like I stole something. Then she said, she's not family. And his father said, then why did I ask her to be in it? James and I divorced 3 years ago. Not because we grew apart. He cheated on me with Sarah, a woman from his company, and lied about it for months while I slowly started feeling like I was losing my mind. It started small. That's the part people never understand unless they've lived it. The business trips that kept getting extended by one day. The new shirts he bought but never wore when he was with me. Every time I asked, he made me feel ridiculous. You're reading into things. You're stressed. You're making problems where there aren't any. You don't trust me, and that's the real issue. For a while, I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to believe him because the alternative was too humiliating. Nobody wants to admit they've been making dinner for someone who is texting another woman from the bathroom. I found out because of a hotel parking receipt. Not a lipstick stain. Just a folded receipt under the passenger seat of his car when I was looking for my sunglasses. Overnight parking at a hotel near Portland. A hotel he had no reason to be at. On a weekend, he told me he was on a work trip with his team. I sat in that driveway with the receipt in my hand and felt my whole body go cold. When I confronted him, he denied it for maybe 5 minutes. Then his face changed. He looked tired. Not guilty, not broken, just tired, like I was forcing him to have a conversation he had already finished in his head. He said he loved her. He said it just happened. He said he had been unhappy for a long time. That part almost made me laugh, because I had been unhappy too. I had been unhappy eating dinner alone while he stayed late at work. I had been unhappy waking up at 2 in the morning while he smiled at his phone in the dark. I had been unhappy apologizing for being suspicious while he gave me every reason to be. But I didn't cheat. I didn't destroy our marriage and then act like I was the victim of the wreckage. The divorce was ugly in a quiet way. We didn't scream in court. We didn't fight over every spoon or throw each other's clothes onto the lawn. It was worse than that. It was paperwork and silence. It was signing my name while remembering the day I signed his. It was packing glasses we bought together and deciding who got the couch where we used to fall asleep during movies. It was learning that a life can be dismantled without a single dramatic scene. What hurt almost as much as losing James was thinking I would lose his family too. Patricia had been in my life for more than 10 years. She taught me how to make her holiday stuffing when I was terrified of hosting my first Thanksgiving. She remembered the anniversary of my dad's death when even some of my own relatives forgot. Robert helped me with my car more times than I can count. He never made me feel stupid for not knowing something. He would just show up with tools and say, "You hold the flashlight, I'll explain." Jessica was the sister I never had. She sent me stupid videos, sat with me during bad days, and once drove across town just because I texted her that I didn't want to be alone. So when James left, I assumed they would disappear with him. They didn't. 2 weeks after he moved out, Patricia called me. I almost didn't answer because I thought she was calling to tell me things had to change now. That she loved me, but he was her son. That holidays would be too complicated. That she hoped I understood. Instead, she was crying. She said, "I don't know how to fix what my son did, but I need you to know I'm sorry." I sat down on the kitchen floor because my legs felt weak. Most of my things were already in boxes. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place I was haunting before I left. And there I was, surrounded by bubble wrap and divorce papers, listening to the woman who used to call me daughter say she was ashamed. Not of me. Of him. Robert came over a few days later with containers of food and a bag of groceries. He didn't make a speech. He never did. He opened my fridge, saw 1 yogurt, coffee creamer, and half a bottle of wine, then gave me the kind of look a father gives when he knows you are lying about being fine. He said, "You eating?" I said, "I'm trying." He nodded, put the groceries away, and fixed the loose cabinet door James had ignored for 6 months. That made me cry harder than the affair did, somehow. Jessica showed up with iced coffee and sat beside me on the floor. She didn't tell me everything happened for a reason. She didn't tell me I was strong. She just said, "My brother is an idiot, and I'm sorry you're paying for it." I laughed for the first time in weeks. Then I cried into a dish towel because I didn't have any clean tissues. They didn't cut James off. I never expected them to. He was their son and brother. I didn't ask them to choose me over him. I didn't want to be the kind of person who demanded that. But they didn't erase me either. That became the problem. Sarah hated that I was still around. I didn't stalk them. I didn't text James unless it involved divorce paperwork or old bills that needed closing. I didn't show up at his place. I didn't post sad quotes online. I didn't compete. I didn't even look at her social media after the first few times because all it did was make me feel like I was pressing on a bruise. But Patricia still called me on my birthday. Robert still checked in when Denver had bad snow. Jessica still invited me for coffee. Sometimes I went. Sometimes I didn't. I tried to be careful. I knew there were lines. I knew things were different. I knew I wasn't technically family anymore. But love doesn't always care about technicalities. James married Sarah about 18 months after the divorce was final. I didn't go to the wedding. Obviously. I didn't send a message. I didn't post anything. I didn't make some bitter little joke online. I spent that weekend with my friend Nicole, who took me to dinner and physically took my phone away after I almost searched their wedding photos. She said, "You're not hurting her by looking. You're only hurting yourself." She was right, which annoyed me. That night, I drank 2 glasses of wine, ate half a plate of pasta, and tried not to imagine Sarah wearing white in front of people who had once watched me walk down the aisle. I hated that image. I hated that it still mattered. I hated that part of me wanted someone to stand up and say, "Wait, didn't we already do this with the woman he betrayed?" But no one did. Life moved on. His life moved on. Their life moved on. Mine did too, eventually. I moved into a smaller apartment in Denver with big windows and terrible water pressure. I bought cheap furniture that didn't remind me of him. I worked too many shifts. I learned how to sleep alone again. I went to therapy, quit therapy, then went back after I had a panic attack in a grocery store because a woman walked by wearing Sarah's perfume. I tried dating once. His name was Daniel. He was kind, patient, normal, and absolutely not the problem. He took me to a baseball game and asked careful questions like he was afraid I might break. After the 3rd date, I told him I wasn't ready. He said he understood. I cried after he left because there was nothing wrong with him, and somehow that made me feel worse. But I was better than I had been. I wasn't waiting for James to come back. That version of me died somewhere between the hotel receipt and the lawyer's office. I didn't want him. I didn't even know if I liked who he had become. What I missed was the life before the lie. The Sunday dinners. The birthday cakes. Robert calling me kiddo when he handed me a plate. Patricia saving the crispy corner of casseroles for me because she knew I liked it. Jessica texting me during boring family events from across the room. I missed belonging somewhere without having to explain why. Then Patricia called about Robert's birthday. He was turning 75, and they were having a dinner in a private room at a nice Italian restaurant in Denver. Not a huge party. Just family and a few close friends. Patricia said Robert specifically asked if I would come. I went silent. She said, "I know it's complicated. Will James be there?" I asked. "Yes." "And Sarah?" A pause. "Yes." I closed my eyes. My coffee had gone cold on the counter. My apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. "I don't want to make things harder," I said. Patricia sighed softly. "Honey, you are not the hard part." I should have known that sentence meant trouble. I told her I would think about it. And I did. For days, I thought about nothing else. I made arguments in my head like I was defending myself in court. Reasons to go. Reasons not to go. Robert had been good to me when he didn't have to be. He asked for me. It was his birthday. I loved him. I was an adult. I could survive one dinner. But James would be there. Sarah would be there. There might be photos. There might be awkward seating. There might be that cold little smile people give when they think you're pathetic but want to look polite. Nicole told me not to go. She said, "You know they love you. But you also know walking into that room gives Sarah a target." I said, "So I should stay away forever because she's uncomfortable?" Nicole didn't answer right away. Then she said, "No. But you need to be honest about what you're walking into." I was. Or I thought I was. I decided to go for Robert. Not for James. Not to prove something to Sarah. Not to reclaim a chair at a table. Just to show up for a man who had shown up for me when my life fell apart. I wore a navy dress because it felt safe. Not too bright. Not too sad. I brought Robert a bottle of bourbon he liked and a card I rewrote 3 times because everything sounded either too emotional or too distant. In the end, I wrote, "Thank you for always making me feel like I had somewhere to land." I almost didn't give it to him because it felt too honest. When I arrived at the restaurant, I sat in my car for 5 minutes before going in. I watched families walk through the front doors laughing and shaking rain off their jackets. I told myself I could leave whenever I wanted. I told myself I did not owe anyone my peace. Then I grabbed the gift bag and walked inside. The private room was near the back. I heard laughter before I saw anyone. For 1 second, it sounded like the old days, and that almost knocked the air out of me. Robert saw me first. His face changed. Not dramatically. Just softened in a way that made my throat close. "There she is," he said. He hugged me so tightly I almost dropped the gift bag. He smelled like aftershave and winter air, and for a second I was 25 again, standing in their kitchen while he teased James for burning burgers outside. I whispered, "Happy birthday." He said, "You came." Like he had been afraid I wouldn't. Patricia cried a little when she hugged me. Jessica grabbed my hand and pulled me toward her side of the table like she had already decided where I belonged. It was warm and awkward and painful in the way old family things can be. Then I saw James. He was standing near the far end of the room, holding a glass of water, talking to one of Robert's friends. He looked older. Not bad, just tired. His hair was shorter. There were lines around his mouth I didn't remember. When he saw me, his expression tightened, then smoothed into something polite. "Emily," he said. "James." That was it. One word each. Years of marriage reduced to two names spoken like strangers in an elevator. Sarah was beside him. She looked beautiful, which I hated noticing. She always did. She wore a cream sweater dress and had her hair pulled back neatly, but something about her looked wrong. Her face was pale. Her shoulders were stiff. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked like someone holding herself together with tape. I didn't know why. At first, I thought maybe it was just me. Maybe my presence made her that tense. I kept my distance. I didn't try to speak to her beyond a polite hello. I didn't look at James unless I had to. I stayed near Jessica and Patricia, laughed softly at Robert's stories, and tried to take up as little emotional space as possible. Dinner started fine. Almost too fine. Robert made jokes about getting old. Patricia corrected him 3 times when he exaggerated details from stories everyone had already heard. Jessica kicked me under the table when one of the older relatives asked if I was seeing anyone special, and I almost choked on my water. It felt normal for little flashes. Dangerous flashes. The kind that trick your heart. Then Jessica asked me to come with her to the restroom. The second the door closed behind us, her face changed. She said, "I need to tell you something before you find out in the room." My stomach dropped. What? She looked toward the door like someone might walk in. Then she lowered her voice. Sarah had a miscarriage 3 weeks ago. I just stared at her. For a moment, I didn't understand the sentence. Or maybe I understood it too clearly and my brain didn't want to touch it. Oh, I said, because there are no good words for that. Jessica nodded, her mouth tight. It was early, but she's been a mess. James didn't want anyone making a big thing of it tonight. Mom only told me yesterday. I leaned against the sink. Suddenly, Sarah's pale face made sense. Her stiffness. Her silence. The way she looked like she might shatter if someone spoke too loudly. I felt sick. I don't like Sarah. I won't pretend I do. She helped destroy my marriage. She knew James was married. She sat across from him in hotel rooms and restaurants while I was at home questioning my own sanity. She became his wife after being his secret. But I would never wish that kind of loss on anyone. Not her. Not anyone. I should leave, I said. Jessica shook her head. No. That'll make it obvious something's wrong. I shouldn't be here. You didn't know. That doesn't make it better. She grabbed my hand. Emily, you were invited. Dad asked for you. This isn't on you. But it felt like it was. Not logically. Emotionally. Like I had walked into someone else's grief wearing the face of another wound. When we went back, I was different. I smiled less. I spoke carefully. I avoided Sarah even more than before because I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't comfort her. That would have been insulting. I couldn't ignore what I knew. That felt cruel too. So I just sat there, stiff and quiet, trying not to exist too loudly. Then Robert opened his gifts. When he opened mine, he pulled out the bourbon and laughed. You remembered. I smiled. You only mentioned it about 100 times. Then he opened the card. I watched him read it. His face changed again. He blinked a few times, cleared his throat, and slipped the card back into the envelope. He said, "You always remember the good stuff." The room got quiet for half a second. Not a dead quiet. Not yet. Just a soft one. I felt Sarah's eyes on me before I looked up. She was staring from across the table. Not crying. Not glaring exactly. Just watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Hurt, anger, exhaustion, maybe all of it at once. I looked down at my plate. Dessert came out after that. Patricia insisted on candles even though Robert complained. Everyone sang. Robert pretended to hate the attention, then smiled through the whole song. For a few minutes, the room warmed back up. I started thinking maybe I had survived it. Then Patricia said, "Before everyone leaves, let's get a photo." I felt my whole body tense. Photos are dangerous after divorce. People think they're just pictures, but they're not. They're proof. They're claims. They say who was there, who mattered, who belonged. I immediately stepped back. "I can take it," I said, reaching for Patricia's phone. Robert frowned. "No, you're in it." I laughed awkwardly. "It's okay. Really?" He shook his head. "No. You came for me. You're in the picture." Jessica tugged gently at my wrist. "Come on. Just stand by me." I should have refused harder. I know that now. I should have said no and meant it. I should have protected the room from what everyone was pretending not to see. But Robert looked so happy. Patricia was already waving people together. Jessica had her hand around my wrist. And I thought, fine. One photo. I'll stand on the edge. I won't be near James. I won't be near Sarah. It'll be over in 10 seconds. I stood at the far side beside Jessica, angled slightly away, smiling the kind of smile that feels more like holding your face in place. That was when Sarah spoke. "Of course." Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room. Everyone turned. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Of course we need the ex-wife in the family photo." No one moved. James said quietly, "Sarah." She ignored him. Her eyes were on me. "No, really. This is insane. She is not family anymore. She is your son's ex-wife. Why is everyone pretending this is normal? My face went hot. My hands started shaking. I wanted to vanish. I wanted someone else to speak. I wanted the floor to open under me and take me somewhere quiet. Patricia said, Sarah, this is not the time. Sarah's face twisted. When is the time? She asked. When I'm not grieving. When I'm not sitting here watching everyone cuddle the woman who got the life before me. That sentence landed harder than I expected. The life before her. She meant my marriage. My home. My place at that table. The holidays, the photos, the inside jokes, the family recipes, the spare key on Patricia's hook, the way Robert still called me kiddo without thinking. The life she helped take. I still said nothing. I swear I tried. But then Sarah looked directly at me and said, you must love this. My throat tightened. She said, you must love that they still choose you. You get to stand there looking innocent while I'm treated like the outsider. I said quietly, I didn't ask them to choose me. She laughed, but it sounded broken. No. You just show up. Sweet, wounded Emily. Poor betrayed ex-wife. Always there. Always waiting for everyone to remind me I'll never be you. That was when something in me cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a clean break inside my chest. I said, Sarah, I'm sorry for what you're going through. I truly am. I didn't know before tonight. And I would never wish that on you. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. I continued, because if I stopped, I knew I would never say it. But do not stand here and act like I invaded your family. I was already in it. James stepped forward. Okay, that's enough. And I looked at him. For the first time that night, I really looked at him. Not as my ex-husband. Not as the man I once loved. But as the person who had lit the match and then spent years acting shocked that everything was smoke. I said, you don't get to referee the fire you started. The room went completely silent. Sarah started crying. Not fake crying. Not dramatic crying. Real, shaking, painful crying. She grabbed her purse and walked out. James followed her after one frozen second, but not before giving me this look like I had ruined his life. Which was almost funny. The dinner ended after that. Not officially. Nobody announced it. But the room was done. People stopped meeting each other's eyes. Patricia kept saying my name like she wanted to apologize, but didn't know which part to apologize for. Robert looked devastated, and that hurt more than anything Sarah said. I hugged him goodbye near the door. He said, I'm sorry, kiddo. I shook my head. No. I'm sorry. It was your birthday. He held my shoulders and looked at me for a long second. Then he said, you didn't do anything wrong by being loved. I barely made it to my car before I cried. Not pretty crying. Not silent tears. The ugly kind where your chest hurts and your nose runs and you feel embarrassed even though nobody can see you. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. I kept hearing Sarah say, she is not family anymore. I kept hearing Robert say, you didn't do anything wrong by being loved. And I didn't know which one hurt more. The next morning, James texted me. I hadn't gotten a personal message from him in months. Seeing his name on my phone still gave me that old stomach drop, which made me angry at myself. His message said I humiliated his wife while she was grieving. He said my presence at family events was confusing and unhealthy. He said I needed to respect his marriage and stop letting his family use me to punish Sarah. I stared at that line for a long time. Respect his marriage. I don't know why that made me laugh and cry at the same time. This man lied to me for months. He let me question my instincts. He let me become a smaller, sadder version of myself so he could keep his comfort until he was ready to leave. He married the woman he cheated with, then told me I was disrespecting his marriage because his father wanted me in a birthday photo. I typed 3 different replies. The first was cruel. The second was too long. The third was just honest. I wrote, I didn't come for you. I came for Robert. I didn't know about the miscarriage until I was already there, and I'm sorry for Sarah's loss. But I will not accept blame for still being loved by people I also loved. You created this situation. Stop asking me to disappear so it feels cleaner. Then I blocked him again. Maybe that was petty. I don't know. But I knew if I let that conversation continue, he would turn it into another courtroom where I had to defend being hurt. Jessica called me that afternoon. She said Sarah was wrong for what she said, but grief makes people ugly sometimes. She wasn't excusing it. She just sounded tired. She said James was angry at everyone and Patricia had cried after they got home. I asked, do you think I shouldn't have come? She was quiet for a few seconds. Then she said, I think Dad wanted you there. And I think Sarah was never going to be okay with that, miscarriage or not. That was the part nobody wanted to say out loud. Sarah's grief made the moment worse, but it didn't create the problem. The problem had been sitting at that table for years. Every birthday call. Every holiday invite. Every time Patricia hugged me too long. Every time Jessica introduced me as basically my sister. Every time Robert forgot I wasn't technically family anymore. Sarah didn't just want James. She wanted the story rewritten. She wanted to be the wife who came after a normal divorce, not the woman who started as a secret. She wanted Patricia to look at her without remembering me crying on a kitchen floor. She wanted Robert to call her kiddo. She wanted Jessica to treat her like a sister. And maybe that's human. Maybe that's normal. Maybe if I were her, I would hate me too. But she wanted my absence to fix her guilt. And it wouldn't. A few days later, Patricia asked if we could meet for coffee. I almost said no. I thought she was going to tell me they needed space. That it would be better if I stepped back. That she loved me, but things had become too complicated. Instead, she looked exhausted when she sat down across from me. She said, "I need to know you don't think we invited you to hurt her." I shook my head. "I know you didn't. I love my son," she said, and her voice cracked. "But I hate what he did. And I hate that everyone acts like the kind thing is to pretend it never happened." I didn't know what to say. She wiped under her eye with a napkin. "Sarah lost a baby. That is terrible. I feel awful for her. But that doesn't mean you have to become invisible." I looked down at my coffee because I didn't trust my face. Then she said something that has stayed with me. "Sometimes people want forgiveness because they think it means nobody gets to remember." That was it. That was the whole thing. I had forgiven more than people realized. Not because James deserved it. Not because Sarah asked for it. But because carrying rage every day was exhausting. I had stopped wanting revenge. I had stopped wishing their marriage would collapse. I had stopped imagining James showing up at my door saying he made a mistake. But I still remembered. I remembered the hotel receipt. I remembered apologizing for being suspicious. I remembered losing weight because food tasted like cardboard. I remembered signing divorce papers while James looked relieved. I remembered being replaced and then being told that my continued existence was disrespectful. Forgiveness did not erase that. It just meant I didn't let it rot me from the inside anymore. After the coffee, I made a decision. I told Patricia I was going to step back from family events for a while. Not forever. Not as punishment. Not because James demanded it or because Sarah owned the room now. But because I needed to stop living on the edge of a family photo, waiting for someone to decide if I belonged in it. Patricia cried when I said it. I cried too. She asked, "Are we losing you?" I said no. I just need to find a version of my life that isn't always attached to what James did. That was the truth. For years, I thought staying close to them was proof that James hadn't taken everything. And maybe it was at first. Maybe I needed those calls, those dinners, those little pieces of belonging to survive the part where my marriage ended. They reminded me I wasn't disposable. They reminded me someone still saw me. But somewhere along the way, it became painful in a quieter way. Because every invitation came with a question. Would James be there? Would Sarah? Would I be welcomed or tolerated? Would I be family or the ex-wife? Would one photo turn me into a problem again? I was tired. So I stepped back. I still talk to Patricia. I still text Jessica. Robert still calls me sometimes when it snows and tells me to check my tires, like I'm not a grown woman who has survived worse than winter roads. But I don't go to every gathering now. I don't put myself in rooms where my presence becomes a test of everyone else's guilt. A month after the birthday dinner, Robert mailed me a photo. Not the group photo. They never took that one. It was a picture Jessica had snapped earlier that night when Robert opened my gift. I'm sitting beside him, smiling a little sadly, and he's holding the bourbon like it's some grand prize. On the back, he wrote, "You were there." That mattered. I put it in a drawer at first. Then I took it out and placed it on my bookshelf. Not because I'm trying to hold on to someone else's family. Because that night happened. All of it. The love, the anger, the grief, the guilt, the ugly truth nobody wanted to say. I won't pretend it was clean. I won't pretend I handled every second perfectly. I know Sarah was grieving. I know my words hurt her. I know part of me wanted her to feel, even for 1 second, what it was like to be the woman standing outside the life she thought was hers. That is not pretty. But it is honest. I didn't go to that dinner to punish her. I didn't go to remind her of the affair. I didn't go to win some invisible competition. I went because Robert asked me to, and because once upon a time, before James turned our marriage into a lie, those people were my family. Maybe they still are, in some strange, broken way. Maybe they aren't. Maybe that's the part nobody knows how to answer. All I know is I am done disappearing just to make betrayal look tidy. I am done pretending that people can burn down a house and then complain when someone still smells smoke. But I am also done letting my life orbit around a marriage that ended years ago. So I'm choosing something quieter now. Not revenge. Not forgiveness, exactly. Just distance. Peace. A life where I don't have to earn my place at a table by surviving someone else's discomfort. Still, some nights, I hear Sarah's voice in my head. She's not family. And then I hear Robert's. Then why is she still in our family photo? So I'll ask honestly, because I still don't know if I handled it right. Was I wrong for going to my ex-husband's family dinner after his new wife's miscarriage, or was I finally allowed to stop apologizing for being loved by the people he brought into my life?